Good morning, Alyssa. This is Miss Tracy. We are going to jump into lesson 103 today. So there's only 5 problems, but they have like multiple blanks, so there's a lot of points there. This is to use long division to divide. If a term is negative, include its sign. So we're dividing this, let me get my pen here, by this. So we're going to take this term here. We're going to put it in a division box. And notice the difference between the two variables. We have x cubed and y cubed. So we have to allow for a transition between these two. So we're going to start here with 8x cubed. And we're going to allow for a transition to the y by decreasing the x every time and increasing the y every time. So plus 0, because it's not going to have any value, it's just got to have a position. That's going to be x squared y. It's still 3 degrees, 2 and 1, but the variables are different. And then we're going to shift that over. Now we have 0xy squared, still 3 degrees, but we're shifting it to the y as we go. Now we're going to use our y cubed term, which is 64y cubed. Still 3 degrees. We just shifted over 3 degrees, 3 degrees to get to y cubed from x cubed. You have to add that y a little bit at a time to get where we need to go. So now we're going to use our divisor, 2x plus 4y here. Now we divide by the x term and we multiply the y term. So 2x goes into 8x cubed. If we multiply a number by 2x to get 8x cubed, that number would be 4x squared. So 4x squared times 2x gives us 8x cubed. Agreed? But now we need to multiply this by the 4y. So 4 times 4 would be 16, and x squared times y would be x squared y. And both of these are positive, but we're going to change the sign in order to cancel the term, just like we would in regular long division. And then we combine these to see what we have left. And that's 16x squared y. So now we divide by the 2x. 2x into 16x squared y would be a negative 8xy. Negative 8xy times 2x gives us a negative 16x squared y. I'll bring down my other term just for a placeholder. That's all it's good for. And I'm going to multiply this times my second term in my divisor. 4 times 8, that's going to be a negative 32xy squared, because y times y gives me y squared, and I have this x here, so that's where we get that from. So you can see now why we use these are just placeholders, so we know we have a position for this multiplication by the y term. Now we change the sign in order to cancel. This cancels. We combine the second term and we get 32xy squared. We divide by the x term, 2x into 32xy, that's going to be 16y squared. If we multiply 16y squared times 2x, we get 32xy squared. I'm going to bring down my 64y, and I'm going to multiply 16y squared times 4y, and I get 64y cubed. Change the signs. This cancels, and I have no remainder. So that means this is my answer. If I were to take this, here's how you would check this. Take this, 2x plus 4y, and multiply it. All division does is it factors. It just factors. So if you want to check your work and make sure, what you can do is you can multiply to make sure that you get back to where you were. We just factored out 2x plus 4y from 8x cubed plus 64y cubed. And these are the factors that we got. So this is a perfect cube. This is a perfect cube. This is 2 times 2 times 2, and this is 4 times 4 times 4. Remember the format. Remember the format, the form 1, form 2, where we said if you have a perfect cube and it's plus, the form is going to be form 1, where you've got the first thing plus the second thing, and then you've got the first thing squared minus the first thing times the second thing, not 2s, plus the second thing squared. This is what we have. This is what we did using long division. We proved this format of form 1 in our perfect cube. If we had recognized this and this as a perfect cube, we could have skipped all of this and just used form 1 and written it all down. Okay? But this was part of the process, was to prove that cubing and that factoring process. So our answer of this divided by this is going to be these three terms. So we have 4x squared is positive, and this right here is just the cursor that was in the way whenever I took the screenshot. This would be negative 8xy, and then this would be 16y squared, and it's positive, so we don't have to put a sign on it. But these are the three terms that we result in whenever we divide this by this. Okay, so if you pay attention to, oh, that's a perfect cube, and this is one of its factors, then you can skip this process and just do the form 1 or form 2. Form 1 is when there's a plus sign, form 2 is when there's a minus sign, and form 2, remember, would be f minus s, f squared plus fs plus s squared. The only difference is if you have a plus sign in your first binomial, then the minus sign comes next. If you have a minus sign in the first binomial, then everything is left over as plus signs. You have 2 plus signs and 1 minus sign, and it's just about where that minus sign is located. That's the two differences in the forms. So let's look at the next one. All right, so here we have another long division to divide. If you notice, it's exactly the same terms. The only difference is we have a minus sign. So what do? We recognize that it is the form of form 2 because we have the minus sign. And we know that that first term, because this is a minus sign, is going to be a minus sign. So we could use form 2 to get our answer. Right, so form 2 would be the first thing minus the second thing. This is where we take this and uncube it, and then the quotient is this part right here in form 2, which would be the first thing squared plus the first thing times the second thing plus the second thing squared. So the first thing is 2x. So we square that, and we get, let me erase the cursor. So that would be 2x squared would be 4x squared. And the second thing, the second blank would be the first thing times the second thing. So 2x times a negative 4y would be negative 8xy. And then the third thing, or the second thing squared would be negative 4 times negative 4 would be 16y squared. So we didn't even have to do all that long division this time. We just had to recognize what we had and use what we know about the cube terms. Okay? So sometimes it's not about being able to do the whole process. It's about being able to recognize what we have here. So let's do the next one. So here is another perfectly cubed term. Let me get rid of that. Perfectly cubed, 3 times 3 times 3, x times x times x, 2 times 2 times 2, y times y times y. And both of these are positive, so we're going to use form 1, which would be the first thing plus the second thing times the first thing squared minus the first times the second plus the second thing squared. That's all we have to do. So we're going to use this format, and this is the first thing and this is the second thing. So we don't have to write that, we're just writing this. This is our quotient of dividing this by this. So the first thing squared would be 3x squared would be 9x squared. And then the first thing times the second thing would be 6xy. And then the second thing squared would be 4y squared. Didn't even have to do any kind of, other calculations. You just had to look at what you had, uncube it, look at what you had, and follow the format. All right, you're smarter than you think you are. You don't have to do that big old long drawn out process. All right, so here's another one. M times m times m minus p times p times p divided by m minus p. That's the minus, so that's the second form, right? So that would be the first thing minus the second thing times the first thing squared plus the first thing times the second plus the second thing squared, right? So the first thing squared is m squared. The first thing times the second thing is negative mp. And then the second thing squared would be p squared. Right, because negative p times negative p, right, and that's our sign. Actually, I take that back. This would not be negative, because the negative is already taken for us. All right, so everything would be positive here. So we just use that format. Okay, so don't stress out about these. These are a lot easier than you think they are. Just use your form. You know what you're doing here. You've got the cube, and you're dividing by that first little binomial of your form 2. So take the shortcut when you have the opportunity. All right, here's the last one. It says divide. If a term is negative, include its sign. Again, this is a perfect cube, and it's a positive. So we know that's going to be the first form. So the first form is the first thing plus the second thing, which is this right here, times the first thing squared minus the first thing times the second thing plus the second thing squared. So I'm going to let you do this one. All right, you've just got to pay attention to what you've got and use what you know you can do. And I know that there's probably was a disconnect, that you were trying to do long division on all these and that you didn't see it. That's why I did the long division on the first one, to show you what we're actually doing here. So use this form, put it in these blanks. All right, this is the first thing, this is the second thing, and we ignore the sign. We just use the sign that is in our form. All right, that was all of that lesson, and I have forgotten which one it is. Let me see. Lesson 103. All right, so if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask, and I will send you videos. Bye for now.